So hello everyone and welcome to Nature Journaling with Elizabeth Murray. We're really excited to have you all here with us today. My name is Amanda Blackwell. I'm your Zoom host for this session, and Adriana is my co-host. So just to remind you, this presentation will be recorded. If you do not want to be recorded, make sure your camera is off. And you can stop or you can mute, or sorry, you can turn your camera off, I believe in the bottom left corner of your screen. Please mute yourself during the presentation. A question and answer session will be at the end of the presentation. Your mute button is located at the bottom left corner of your Zoom screen. And if you're on a mobile device, you can tap your screen and find the mute button at the bottom. If you have any questions, you can put them in the chat box. As we'll have time afterwards for questions. Your chat box can be found at the bottom center Zoom screen, and you click on chat. So now to our program. Elizabeth Murray is an artist, author, and international workshop teacher. She weaves spirituality with art to help people see and connect with nature and with their surroundings. Elizabeth's artwork is drawn from observations in her garden, as well as from natural landscapes. Elizabeth offers weekly classes where she guides participants in making illustrated journals of gratitude. And through her creative process, she inspires others to create a personal commitment to what they love. So now, without further ado, we will turn the session over to Elizabeth.
Hello, welcome. It's such a beautiful day that I wish we were all outside together, but this will inspire you, I hope, to get your creativity going and go outside. And first of all, what I love about drawing and about nature journaling is to really be present. And for me, when we're totally present and we're looking at something really beautiful, our hearts open, and then we can actually get into awe and wonder. So we're going to just take a moment to be in our bodies, breathe, collect yourself, get your feet on the ground, not cross-legged. Just really present, because we want to be fully embodied. We want to be fully present. Take 3 big breaths just to enter. When we think about inspiration, that is about breathing and being inspired. And to me, nature and spirit and beauty and creativity are all connected. So thank you for being here. I've been doing this for years and years, and I have in my nature journals, I have many different types. Some are handmade, some are little ones, it might be the cliffs of Big Sur, or just a quick time at the beach, or maybe it's a quick sketch and I haven't finished watercoloring it yet, or, that's this New Year's Day. Sometimes it's really windy and cold and I'm doing it. Then I make these little folding books and write some of my gratitudes around. And just, I think during the pandemic, it's fun to have things that continue to unfold and to have my horizons get bigger rather than to feeling the limits. Like I only have this one page. Oh no, I'm out in an orchard in Big Sur, I'm out by the mountains. I can just keep continuing. There's something spiritual and psychological about being able to have a continuing horizon. So I have been making paintings that are 12 and 15 feet long. So today, it doesn't matter if you have one piece of paper or folding paper or a big piece. These are just little drawings that I've been making in some of my classes. And I paint on both sides. This isn't for preciousness. Here's some vegetables. It's for play. It's for working every day, not being too attached. So today we're going to be working, you can either work with pencil, which is available to most all of us, or with a pen. These Micron pens are what I use. You can use any kind of pen, but it's best to be waterproof, especially if you are going to watercolor it afterwards. And today being the first day of spring and unfolding, and let's have a query of what is coming out of dormancy in our own lives. So these are beautiful crab apples. And of course, as part of the miracle of life, they're from what looked like a dead branch, which was totally in dormancy. And they have this magic within that has swollen and given rise to these beautiful pink and white blossoms. So I use, sometimes when I go out in nature, I use just a small watercolor set, but now, and I have a little bag that I put my things in. I put my pencils, I put my notebooks, I put my brushes. Sometimes I just use really small, this for water. This sometimes an old film can. I'll put my water in so that I can dip it. I tend to use a lot of these little, their water brush. It's a brush that you can actually put water in. And when you're working outside, and I first started doing this going down the Grand Canyon, where I was just painting in the boat and painting every day. They, in hot weather or out in nature, they help keep the flow of the paint going. And there's different brands of them and stuff. There's different sizes. But I find that they're easy and not very expensive and not that precious. And so I use those. Today, I'm going to put on another camera that I have so that you can look down at my desk. And I encourage you, you can draw with me. You can draw exactly what I'm making. I'm going to be, as I said, working with these beautiful apple blossoms, the crab apple blossoms. And today I started drawing them earlier just on a piece of paper, and I started drawing them with pencil. These are not completed. Sometimes we want to be botanically correct and really exact, and that is a wonderful discipline. And I do that kind of drawing, and that's really about slowness and careful observation. But the thing that today we're just going to do it in more of a playful, experimental way and a little bit quicker. Sometimes when we draw quickly, then we're not so much in judgment. And it's really important not to be in judgment because that tends to make us uptight and stop and, oh, I'm not very good. Oh, I've never been very good. Oh, and that doesn't keep us in the awe and the delight. So I'm switching over to my other camera. Hopefully it doesn't want to switch, but it will. Oh my goodness. Okay, there we go. So here is my drawing that I started with. These little notebooks, I'll move to the side. We'll put, so you can draw along with me. The first thing that I do is I really look. Now I have several little branches, which this is pretty complicated. It has a lot going on. So I probably have to simplify it. Otherwise, it's going to be too overwhelming. Even since I picked these, they've been popping open more. And I often ask myself, what is the story? Why am I attracted to this? What is my favorite part? I love the idea that it's coming out of dormancy. And I think I'm really attracted to this one here because it has the buds. And the buds are part of the story because what is blooming in myself? What is coming out of dormancy? Is there something that needs pruning? Simplicity. Here's a nice little pussy willow that I might draw as well. And I might be thinking of my piece of paper, what might be the positive, negative space that I want to draw something into. So these original little drawings I did the other day are in pencil. I could continue with pencil, but I think I'll do it with pen just so that you can see a difference. Pen is, of course, a lot sharper. You cannot erase it. So then you have to be kind of assured in what you do. So I'm going to look at my overall design. They're both going this way. I need some movement, and when we look at positive and negative space in drawing, it's like if my hand is the positive, then the space between is the negative. So that's part of the design. This is the negative space. Negative space allows us to see the shape. And I could draw this, I could paint this perfectly brown, dark brown, or I can, as I did before, make them kind of purple or a little bit more like a Faubus, a little bit more wild. That is your choice as an artist. And a lot of times, I'm going to hold it in my hand, and you can decide where you want to draw. If you want to draw with the bottom of the stem coming up, or you want to start with your blossoms. I think I'll start with the bottom of my stem, and I'm going to move up this way. I hope, and you can just jump in. So let's see, the bottom was sort of ripped off of, and part of this is a practice of what we call eye-hand coordination. So the more we draw, the better our eye can follow a shape, whether it's hills, a bird, a little a tree, or this little small branch or little flowers. But as our eye learns to follow, so that's teaching us about observation, which is kind of like bird watching. When our eye learns to follow, and then our hand begins to move as our eye follows. And this takes a little practice. I'm drawing back in here, and actually we won't be able to see all of that blossom because we have other blossoms in the front. And the thing that one of the many things I love about drawing is that we're actually becoming an alchemist. Alchemist is someone who takes lead and makes it into gold, takes something of little value and makes it more valuable by doing magic. So drawing to me is actually magical. It's actually taking something, just a pen, some watercolors, and creating something with more value because you've put your own love into it. You've put your own time. You've put your skills of observation into it. And that is precious. I love embroidery or anything that feels handmade or has that vibration of a loving quality of someone having spent time. I love gardens. I love nature more, but a garden, now I'm going to follow up here. A garden is an intersection of the wild and the cultivated. So you can see where the gardener has put time into their beauty making, into their relationship with the natural world. And if they're totally into control, then they're not allowing nature. They're more into their, what I would think of as ego. So here we're all at different stages. Each day is different. Some days we're maybe a little bit more practice, just like if you do yoga or you do something, some days you're better at it, even though you could do it perfectly yesterday. And we don't have to start with drawing. We could start just with our watercolor, and then it would be looser. It wouldn't be as controlled or as exacting. Now I'm going to move over to this blossom. And either way is absolutely fine. Now, one thing we want to pay attention to when we're drawing a flower or a tree is we want to look at it close enough that we know something about it. So apple blossoms have 5 petals. So it's very important. They're kind of in the star shape. We want to make sure that we are drawing all 5 petals, or if you don't see one, that's fine. Sometimes they're hidden behind something. But we wouldn't necessarily want to draw 6 petals because it would, once you start to ID the flower, you would know that it wasn't really that variety. We also want to pay attention to how they're connected. That is one of the hints on how, what kind of plant it might be. So that's part of our observation, and it's part of our, like if we were doing identification, we would look and go, okay, I have a 5-petaled flower. Well, that's the rose family, which is also the apple family. They're in the same family. It's just like if we looked at your family, we saw some traits. So we would be looking at those family traits, character qualities, growth qualities. Now this down here, sometimes we'll have, we'll have something that has lost its petals. This one only has 1 petal left. So as an artist, I can decide, maybe has 2, I can draw those in, or I'll leave it because I want to show that this is in full bloom, such full bloom that it's actually going to start shedding its petals pretty soon. And some people might think it's sad when flowers lose their petals, but it needs to do that in order to go towards its fruit. Okay, so I have that main little flower in drawn. I can now decide if I'm going to draw another flower. Maybe I want some petals going down. What else is my little painting needing? Maybe I will do this little pussy willow. And I feel like my composition needs a bit of a curve. Now, if I collected this quite often, a wild pussy willow, we know our plant materials, willows need water. So down in at the park, we would find the willows by the creek, by the Carmel River. Because whenever we see willows, we know there's a good water source. It's just like seeing sedges and rushes. If you see those in a meadow, you know there's a groundwater there. So our plants can tell us about things we can't see. If they are thriving. Now I'm going to have the pussy willow underneath the other blossom that was drawn, because that will look like it's behind it. So these little pussy willows are on, the little pussy parts are on alternating parts of the branch. As I move down. Now, some people draw really, really slowly, and certainly when I've done botanical illustration, you have to go very slowly. Botanical illustration would also teach us about oftentimes just doing it in black and white. And so we would do little shadowing, little stippling, little dots, little cross hatching. We want to make, a lot of times with botanical illustration, we want to be able to see where the shadow is. The shadow is going to give us a lot of interest and share the kind of dimensionality of everything. I think I'll draw one more little. Maybe I'll do I'll start to paint them, and then I'll do I'll do more drawing if we have time. So with my painting, a lot of times I'm outside in nature doing this painting, which is really my favorite. And it depends a lot on we can color with colored pencils, we can color, I like the water kind of colored pencils that I can get wet afterwards. This is my set that I use. You can see I really like the yellow. I love this color green. Those are the colors I use the most. It's nice to have it, to get it clean when you start with, which I didn't. And we can decide to start with the green. We can decide to start with a pink. I think I'm going to start with a pink. And with traditional watercolors, you don't use white. You just use the white of the paper itself. So depending on the kind of watercolors you have, you might use a red. Try not to use pink. Make it paler by using more water. And when we really look at these, we see that the back of the blossoms are quite dark pink, almost red. Some of these like little sweet little buds here are almost red. I think I'm going to add this. I'm going to attach it here because I just want to show some more buds. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going to, because I want to be able to paint them. So when they're really tight, they're so much deeper color. And I think that's one of the charms of this crabapple is the different shades of pink. If it was only one solid pink, for me, it wouldn't be as beautiful. And these are one of the plants, they're a cultivar. They were just an apple, and then they've been cultivated to be a beautiful garden variety plant. Monet grew them in his garden. His variety came from Japan. So at least I have a little bud in there. So I'm going to start with my pink. A lot of times, and better to start light. It's always nice to have a little bit of a paper towel. So that if you can wipe off your brush. The thicker you make your paint, the more concentrated, the deeper color it's going to be. I have quite a lot of moisture on that. So I can dry my brush and try to soak up a little bit of that. Dry my brush by putting it on the paper towel. Now, it's better for me to go lighter, like these are all lighter and they all need to be gone over again, which I'll show you a little bit of doing that. And I really like to vary my color, even if it's all, you go, oh, it's all the same plant. Why would I vary my color? Because it varies with the light. It varies with its maturity. It varies on which way we see it. And I'm going to go, and I'm going to do all my pink first. And I'm doing my pink first for 2 reasons. One, because I have it mixed up. I know what color pink I'm working with. The color seems to be working pretty well. And I want to have a chance for that pink to dry before I bring in green, because if I put them side by side, they can kind of blur into each other. Now, I might be adding a little bit of purple, a slight amount of violet. My brush is getting unwound. To be my shadow. Shade often, something that's in shade will often have a cool color. So mixing a little blue or purple into something works. Leave a little bit of white space as you paint. The white space sometimes can be reflection if the petal or the leaf is shiny. These aren't particularly shiny, but they do actually have white on them. And the more variety of color, it will be more interesting, even just slight varieties, slight changes, maybe change with the amount of water you're using or the concentration of the paint itself. But that's part of our observation. And also if we do it lighter to start with, then as we go back, we can add more paint. And here we have this opportunity to really look at something close, very closely. And you might be drawing along with me, or you may have something from your garden or from your nature that you're drawing. It is, for me, it's all about love. It's falling in love with what I'm doing, falling in love with this. And I have found, like in real life, if I am continually in judgment with my love, oh, I don't know if this is very good. I'm not very good. I don't know if I deserve this. I won't really be present, and I won't be in joy and delight. So just be in curiosity. Gosh, isn't this interesting? Huh. I think I'm missing a petal here. I wonder if that's a leaf or a petal. I'm not sure. I think it's a leaf. Just being curiosity, being like that open-heartedness. Now I can go back with my pink, and I can look at some of these other blossoms and go, oh yeah, well, now they have this pink out. I might add a little bit more depth to them. Going over something later is really a lovely thing. It adds a lot more depth to something. So now I can decide, it's still wet if it's still shiny. And if it's wet, it's a good time that you can blend something in so that you can actually get a little bit of wet into wet, which is a way we do water, or we do skies, or when we want to blend something, the wet into wet will make it all blur together in a very beautiful way. But we don't want to do that with the green so much, because then it's going to look flat, and we don't want the green muddled with our petals, because this kind of flower doesn't really have that. I'm going to be looking closely and seeing that the edges maybe have a little bit more deeper color, depending on which one it is. So I'm going to be mixing up maybe a little lavender, maybe a little extra red. And we can change our colors. If we want to do pure botanical illustration, every plant exactly right, then we're going to be very accurate with the colors. And it's very fun to actually mix the color and paint the petal and to see how exact you've made it. That's a really good training for mixing. And I do that sometime. Just paint the color back and forth. Don't even care about your shapes. Experiment. And I always think of it a little bit like cooking, where the more familiar we are with our cooking, what this roasted garlic is going to taste like. Well, I'm not going to put that in my chocolate cake, but I will put it in my pasta sauce. So you just kind of know, you become more familiar with practice and observation, what certain colors are going to do, what certain techniques might do. Okay, so I'm going to put my water and put my brush in the water, and I'm going to mix up some yellow and green, and depending on the kind of palette you have, this is sort of a Kelly green, what I'd say, because it is spring usually has a lot more yellow in it. The greens are a lot more yellow. So I love my yellow, and in my palette, I have different shades of yellow. And looking at this, you can see the underside is more yellow than the over. So depending on how I drew it, if I'm looking at the underside or I'm looking at the top of the leaf. And sometimes there's almost a bluish green that comes over as like a shadow. So I might add a tiny bit of blue to it as well. And not a lot, but just a little bit. And that will create a little bit of variety. Maybe I just want to do that a tiny bit on the edges, or as like a little indication of a shadow, because that petal's going to be over.
There's a little bit of that.
For
So
same
depending
green
on
or
how I
pink,
drew
we
it, if
wanna
I'm looking at
vary
the underside
them,
or I'm looking at the
and we vary them
top of the leaf
because of interest.
in the overall
And
painting, but
sometimes there's almost a bluish
green
green that comes over
the
as like a shadow.
observation.
So I might add a tiny bit of blue to it as well. And we could
not a lot,
even
but just a little bit, and that will
underpaint
create
some of these
a little bit
yellow,
of variety.
very yellowish
I might-
green, and then
maybe I
drop
just
in
want to do
some
that
more
a
colors.
tiny
I
bit on
noticed
the
that the
edges,
where the stem comes in and
or
becomes
as
a
like a
vein,
little indication of a
that's
shadow,
very
because that
yellow
petal's
green.
going to be over.
So I can paint the whole thing a yellow
There's
green,
a little bit
very
of that.
yellow green.
Now
And then I could drop in a little, like looking over here, I could drop in a little bit more darker green. And that kind of gives me a sense of movement and shape. And I'm leaving that middle vein light. Now I'm gonna stems that go to the flowers. Some of them are very green at the top. And make sure these are dry. Yeah, they feel dry. So you can lightly touch your painting, and if it feels cold, you know it's probably wet. If it feels dry, nothing comes up on your finger, you're okay. And then some of them get almost pinky down the stem. I was just this week able to go to the Japanese tea garden in San Francisco, and oh my gosh, it was so beautiful. All the cherry blossoms are in bloom. So lovely. Such a delight to be there. I encourage you all to visit sooner than later. And you can go to the Dion and see the Frida Kahlo show. And as artists, it's really lovely to see other artists, be inspired. So here I'm looking at my stem. It's kind of brown. These other ones I just did in purple. Sometimes I'll do brown, but I'll add some more color to it. So it's not just, maybe I'll add a little blue or add a little purple to it. I noticed the bottom of the stem where it broke is going to be more paler color. The brown indicates that it's been on the vine for a while, that it's woody. I just got a tiny bit of purple that I'm going to be adding for shadow. I don't use black except for my black ink. If I use ink, I try to avoid black. And for dark colors, sometimes I'll use opposite colors. I try not to use black. Part of that's my training from all my work with Impressionists. But part of it is that nature doesn't use black particularly. Shadows are purples and blues and really a concentration of colors. So it's better to mix a whole lot of color together, and often it's going to be opposite colors to get your very dark darks. And dark darks are wonderful. They will make everything else sing. A lot of times I go, oh, I just like the pretty colors. I don't want all that dark stuff. But the dark really, as we add shadow, it really will give you a sense of beauty, and it will let everything else hold, just like you might show off some diamonds on a black velvet rather than on a white silk. So I'm just putting in my little anthers here. They're kind of white with a little bit of yellow. When we do white on white paper, we have to show up the white by putting dark around it. Otherwise, we can't really see white on white. So artists will choose to have a background of some kind, whether it's the sky or another leaf or something like that, to let that jump forward. So sometimes it's good just to sit back and look. Like all of nature drawing, it's about, as we said, presence and observation. So we have to have that presence and observation about really what we're doing in this moment. How does my drawing look? What do you think I need on this one? Oh, I might as well put in some veins. Well, it has a little bit of a serrated edge. Maybe I can indicate that. I didn't do it with my ink, but maybe I can indicate that a little bit. Okay, this is looking all right. Now, put this little, now I'm going to try just that pussy willow. Now, basically, it is dark brown and white. But as we look at the white, it's really a silvery, it's really a blue gray. And if you happen to have this color, a Payne's gray, it is sort of a bluish. And a lot of times I'll add blue. So now I'm using some Payne's gray. Here's my little color chart here that says my names and my colors. It's a little hard when we don't all have the same color. So try to again void black, use some dark blue or blue with maybe dark purple. And then we're going to water this down a lot. And so I'm just going to be observing. I'm also going to be looking at the shadow underneath the pussy willow. So maybe my shadow is going to be helping. I want it very light. I don't want to be too dominant for my shadow. Maybe my shadow, which usually it depends on where your light source is. Botanical Illustration often has it from the upper right-hand corner. That's the traditional way. But we're gonna, I'm using these shadows that I'm actually seeing here. I'm using them to help form the shape of the little fuzzy white. And then I'm going to go back. I could do my shadows afterwards, but I'm just kind of inspired to do them to start with. They're kind of a magic. They can make things look so cool. They can make it look more three-dimensional. Let's kind of move it over there a little bit. So that's enough shadow. Well, we have more going here, but I don't want to spend too much time on my shadows. I like the metaphor of shadow. Shadows are really important. Some plants will only grow in the shade. Sometimes we need things that are shaded in order to really, especially in hot weather, we need to have things not in the bright light. Okay, now I'm going to make my stem color, which is really like a dark, dark, dark brown. But for my eye, for my interest, I'll make it dark brown, but I'm going to add dark purple with it too, because otherwise just brown is not interesting to me. So I've mixed some dark brown and some dark purple. If you have a, and I'm just going to be looking closely at my little stem. And as I'm looking at it, I'm noticing how it's connected to the little pussy willow shapes. And it's really lovely to observe how nature designs things. You'll see many different kinds of flowers and how each flower, which becomes usually a fruit and then a seed, how each one really wants to get enough sunlight. And so this is like living in cooperation. It's the best for the plant not to compete with one another. Everybody, it's like our communities. We want everybody to be well. We want everyone to succeed. That is how we get health. And how if everybody gets enough, that is the way of nature. And that's the way that we really want to try to live ourselves. So I know I have this nice dark color on my brush. I'm just going to put in a few dots here. Maybe I'm going to look at something I've already drawn and realize it could probably use a little bit more darkness. if we're thinking about the light coming from above or the upper right-hand corner, we can make an assumption that the lower part is going to be more in shadow. We want to have a sense of something rounded. And as I said, we're just working with magic here. So we have flat, we're making illusions. So if I can make something look more round, it can help with my shadow and with making my little stem a little bit darker on the bottom. And watercolors tend to be brighter when we first paint them, and a lot of watercolors tend to change colors when they dry. The more expensive watercolors tend to have better pigment and so are a little bit truer. Now I'm going to put in a little bit of color for my pussy willows themselves. And in my eye, they're sort of a bluish, a little bit of green. Of course, they look white silver. So it's going to be pretty watered down. And I don't want to make them look like that might have been a little too dark. So if I feel like it's too dark, I can take my paper towel and I can sort of blot it. That can change. I want to keep some areas super white. And the whitest white I can have without using white paint is my white paper. So I can make the area look whiter by just making a little bit darker below and leaving it pure white. I'm just going to be observing. And as I observe, maybe I think, oh yeah, maybe I need a little more shadow over there. Maybe that shadow didn't really. And you can change your shadow colors. Some shadows can be darker than others. I didn't draw that perfectly color, shape. It doesn't matter. Don't worry about things. Sometimes I like people to just use pen so that you don't worry about erasing. So you just go for it. And that's really nice for practice. If we just run and do it rather than try to make everything perfect. It's gives us the opportunity of more joy if we don't judge, if we're just in delight. And we can be kind of in amazement because we don't know how it's going to come out. It's all just playing with it in the moment. And we can take another layer. We can put more layers on. Sometimes that tiny bit of more layers, a little bit different color, a little bit more tiny little dots, maybe a little thought of a little bit of fuzziness. That makes a difference. Now, looking at this, my apple blossom here, I think it needs, I can see where it needs a little bit of the green, where the blossom and the stem touch. I think it's called the calyx, and we're gonna paint that in. Now that I know my pink is all dry, I don't have to worry about it. And that is that pretty little star shape. You cut an apple in half, you see that star shape again. And that's one of the distinctions of the rose family is that star shape. Roses used to be just 5 petals, and then they've gotten hybridized over the years to have so many more petals. But their initial family, the wild ones, you'll often see with 5 petals.
Elizabeth, this is looking really beautiful. We have about 15 minutes left, so I just wanted to check in with our participants to see if they have any questions for you. So if people would like to open up their mic or put a question in the chat, feel free.
I can't see any of that, so I'll just keep working. And you can.
Yes, go ahead. Keep working, and if any questions pop up, we'll let you know. And
okay, yeah, or they can unmute themselves at this point and ask.
Yes. Yeah.
So I think what I'll do is I'll just add a shadow to this one, and then you can kind of see how that shadow works. I also want to do, I left some white areas. So maybe I can move this a little closer. You can see how this pussy willow is working nicely with the shadow, how it makes it kind of pop up. And so I'm going to just look. Yeah, please ask me any questions. It's helpful to me. And I will.
So it looks like Gina asked, what was the name of the pink flowers?
Oh, these are crab apples. It's a crab apple, but I don't know its variety. It's probably a japonica type, a Japanese variety. Hi, Gina. Gina's taken my classes a couple of times. Nice to see you here. She's doing a beautiful project on the plants in her garden. And she works a lot of times with colored pencils, which can be very lovely and exacting.
Hi, Elizabeth. I hope you will do in person again.
I will. I just got my second vaccine, so we will work in person soon.
Great.
Yeah, it's more fun, isn't it?
Yes.
But I'm glad you're here on the Zoom. So I just made this shadow super close to my stem, but I'm looking at this, and of course it depends on where my light source is coming from, but I see this shadow is actually a little bit farther away. So I'm going to alter it as I come up farther. I don't want to totally change it too much, but I think shadows can really give you a lot of interest, and they can make your little drawings feel like they're really kind of coming forward, like they're sitting on something. And of course, you know, if I'm doing the landscape out there in Carmel Valley, oh gosh, it's so beautiful. You can try doing the whole landscape. We still want to observe our shadows, and how the shadows go across the land. And sometimes it's fun even to make a shadow, and then we can trace our shadows. We can get our pencil or pen and look at the shadow and actually get those shapes and trace them. And that's a nice way to work too, to kind of go, oh, wow, look at, I got that shape. That is so cool. And it's, you know, no matter what our age, to be able to be in that joyous delight, youthful children. I paint a lot with little children because I think it's so important for them, and it's fun for me. I have some children I bring out into nature, and during this pandemic, it's been really fun for all of us to mask up and go into the woods or go into the beach or something like that, and to draw. So
it looks like we have another question from Catherine. She's wondering if you have a favorite brand of watercolors.
Yeah, well, I like Winsor Newton, and I like different things. The one that I've been using the last few years is this. It's all kind of worn out. You can see Yarko St. Petersburg watercolors, 36. And it also comes with this slightly smaller. I get them online, and very strong pigments, which I like a lot. When you open them up, because I'll be covered in foil and everything, glue them in place, because I brought these out into nature and the whole things will fall out. So you want to glue them in place. And then on the back is a color chart, and it's nice to have that. One of my students actually made this copy for me and laminated it, because this is helpful because some of the colors look quite dark. You can go, what color is that? So that's great. This is a really good, I love this set. It's my third one. and I used it when I was in the Grand Canyon. I brought it twice, and it got so full of sand that my little brushes got completely worn out as well. Yeah. So yeah, but it just depends on what you can afford. I think a lot of times I'll speak for myself. I'll think, oh, I'm not good enough. I don't deserve that good a set. Oh, I'm, but this pandemic teaches us, what are we waiting for? What is important? For me, I give a lot of time to my art because it's also my spirituality. It's my relaxation. It's my joy. And so we just don't save it. I mean, forget the dishes. Leave a few chores left undone. Get to your art as joy. Many of us, America has to take all these antidepressants, medications, because we don't connect to joy enough. But nature, being in nature and being with beauty, I'm going to be adding a little bit of color to these ones I drew before, so that they have a little bit more jump, a little bit more pizzazz by looking at them. Being able to be with beauty, be with our nature. These are the healing steps, being creative, opening our hearts to the love around us, the beauty around us. This is something that feeds us well. And it helps us with our priorities for community, our priorities for nature. Nature, I think, is our kin, part of our kinship. So it's required to have kindness. And here we are on the day that we're celebrating all this, on the spring equinox. Is a time of opening and blossoming. So you can think about what is opening and blossoming in your own life, or what you want to have open and blossom. What has heart and meaning? What has importance to you? And we always have this opportunity. We are so fortunate to see the beauty around us. And it's a way of choosing, rather than choosing just to see negativity or something. We get to see beauty. So do we have other questions? You don't have to be shy. I saw a child on here. Maybe she has a little question. When we're taking notes, we're doing this kind of work. It's nice if you want to write down the date, write down the place, write down the plant if you know it, make notes. That will make what you're doing even more meaningful. I have in all these books that I've made. Here's a little one that I took. I'll just show it to you. I did it in Ireland. So this is all done outside. And and it was really windy, so that started to unravel. But this is at the beach in Ireland. And so this is one of the Japanese folding books from Moleskine. And it was a sacred place. And so I just kept drawing and watercoloring and looking at the rocks and continually. And then then it goes into meadow, and the rocks into the meadow, and then little houses. This is a sacred place. And then the animals. So we came across some horses, and So my friend who I was traveling with, an Irish friend, she was swimming. And I said, oh, while you swim, I didn't want to swim in the ocean. I was like, I'm going to paint all this. And, what do we see? What do we love? And the rocks were with orange. And there was tiny little wildflowers that went right to the beach. So everything can tell your story. And I could write a story on here as well. But so this was Galway, Ireland, 2018. 2 years ago. So yeah, these fold out, these small ones fold out to 9 feet long. So I encourage you to play with different kinds of books. You can make your handmade books. You can do one big piece of paper like this. I'll just continue to work on this one while we.
Yeah, it looks like we just have a few more minutes left. Did you want to share with us more about your classes and just how we can access you in the future and learn more of these wonderful lessons?
Sure. Okay, I will. Let's see, I will.
Oh, and I'll mention that your website, Elizabeth's website, is in the chat for anyone who wants to check it out.
There we go. Okay. Yeah, it's just my name, elizabethmurray.com. And I have a little newsletter on there. And the newsletter I do every couple of weeks. I did one for today and with different little themes. And I usually have a painting or sometimes a photograph that I've taken. But it's, I call it, it's about living life in full bloom, which was a book I wrote. So yeah, I'll be having an open studio tour, even though the rest of the community has decided not to do it. I will be doing it personally in my studio here in Monterey, the 2 weekends in May. So I invite anyone who would like to venture forth to come. I live in an old artist colony. It was called Peter's Gate. It's Peter's house. I've restored into little cottages, and I've recently built a painting studio. And my personal work right now is working with trees. So I am learning to speak to trees and to listen to the trees, and then to do my artwork around trees. And that work has led me all over the world, including 6 times to the Amazon rainforest and to these rainforests up in Oregon and in Haida Gwaii, Queen Charlotte Islands, and of course our beautiful redwoods and our beautiful coastline oak trees here. And so I love drawing them. I love being with them. I love painting them. So please, check it out. You'll be able to come see that in my different classes and books and so on. So thank you. Get wild. My idea is to get wild. Don't be too contained. Don't be too safe. Don't be too, safe, with our health, but with your spirit, allow wildness to come in. That is something I think is important. So thank you, Amanda.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Thank you so much, Elizabeth, for sharing these wonderful lessons with us today. We're going to wrap up. Yes, please check out Elizabeth's website, elizabethmurray.com. Now that we've learned these lessons from these sessions, we can take them out into nature.
Just go out in your garden right now.
Yeah, and also please rate the session below in the Uva app, and and that'll
and lift up your drawing that you did, your little drawing if you're brave. Cool. Oh, lovely. Good. Lovely. Yay, you did really great. Good. Okay. More to come. Christina, you're gonna. Okay. Oh, you did a lovely. Good. Beautiful. Yeah, just that drawing's going to add a lot to your journal making, and just have that courage, that heart connection courage to just to do it with joy. All righty. Thank you. Go outside, have fun. Bye, Gina.